Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rock Garden meeting. Our speaker this morning is Tim Alderton, who's a native of Brookville, Pennsylvania. Tim graduated from Penn State University in 2002 with a degree in horticultural science. He then interned at Callaway Gardens in Pine Mountain, Georgia. And then after he interned there for 2 or 3 years, he left and came to Plant the Lights Nursery in Raleigh, working for Tony Avon. The following year, he came to the Arboretum, and he's been here since then. He's a member of our local rock garden board, and he's also a member of the national chapter as well, too. So we're happy that he's here with us today, and he's going to be speaking about wildflowers of the Croatan National Forest, as if you didn't know it already. So, Tim, welcome.
I'm by no means an expert at this. I just know the tip of the iceberg. As you've seen in this little thing here, back there is the Croatan National Forest. And I've only been to this little itty bitty corner of it, basically, down here in the southeasternmost corner of it, which, as Charlie alluded to, this is where you'll find a lot of carnivorous plants. I've seen at least 8 different ones, I think, or 7 or 8 different ones, and there's probably some other ones I haven't seen, I know of. That's the most noteworthy thing about this area. But tons of flora in this area. The Croatan National Forest, I guess, has been, if I remember reading someplace, it's like, it has almost the same diversity as a tropical rainforest, and if you look at it by the square yard. So it's such a diverse area. I have only seen just the smallest little bit of it, plant-wise. And it's just a really cool area. You can always find something new. Each time I go, I find something else. And aside from that, there's also really cool other wildlife, birds and reptiles down there, and mammals as well. So, but anyways, we'll get started here. But as you can see, it's let's see. Here's Wilmington, and it's up here. So if you're familiar with the Emerald Isle area, it's just on the mainland from Emerald Isle. If you go down there, so it's about a 2.5 to 3 hour drive. And I have relatives down there, so it's I go visit them, and they're running out of things to show me, so I go and I take time by myself or with another fellow, a friend of theirs, and I go into the Croatan, and that's how I started to do this. They aren't much into wild areas, as you'll get to see them here in a few minutes. But anyways, back to the map. The area I'm going to concentrate on is in this little box here in the southeast corner, just north of the bridge that goes out to Emerald Isle, which is right here, the Emerald Coast, or the Crystal Coast. And here's the blow up of that box, basically. Some of the areas that I'll show you some plants from are this Millis Road bog. These are just names I gave them. They're not formal names at all, but it's a bog and it's on Millis Road. It's really cool area where lots of pitcher plants, which you'll see. Up here on the Millis Road, Savannah / Picosin. I'm not sure it's actually Picosin, but it's the term I'm using anyways. You'll see some pictures of that, and I'll show you a lot of the flora from there that I've taken pictures of. And down here, Pringle Road, the first time I found this place, they had had one of the burns. They try to burn this area about once every 3 years if it doesn't burn on its own. And the first time I was there, this had just been burned. So that's when you get a lot of the diversity, because it opens it up and you can see a lot of the stuff. And that's what a lot of these plants require to continue their existence. If they get shaded out and it goes to a heavy forested area, a lot of these plants will not survive. They need the openness that the fires provide. And then another area that I have some of my photos from is the Patsy's Pond, which is actually it's a more developed area. There's actually trails and stuff through it. There's 3 or 4 ponds in here, maybe 5 actually. The biggest one is maybe a couple acres of area. But anyways, very different areas within just this small, from here to here, it's quite different. And the flora is really extreme. So let's see what I have here next. So I'm just going to show you some of the pictures of some of these places. This is like I said, the Millis Road bog. And I don't know if you can see here in the picture, but that's full of pitcher plants. And I'll show you some better pictures of them later on. But a lot of other things are in that. I'm going to go back here. A lot of other things can be found in this. It's a depression. From what I understand, this depression, it's maybe 200, 300 feet long. It was dug out whenever they were building the road, the Millis Road. I think they used it for fill to actually build the road. And this depression that is there now, and a lot of cool stuff has taken hold in there. I don't know when they did that. It might have been 50 or 75 years ago. It's hard to say. It's been a while. And then this is a picture of Patsy's Pond. This is actually the biggest pond in this. I think I took this picture in 2012, and they had some dry years. So I'm guessing the water level could be way higher here. I've been back, and it's been a bit higher than this, but as in here. But they've had drier weather than what we've had here the last 2 years even. Quite different around the edges of this area here. And then I said about my cousins that I go visit, and I was wandering just off to the side, a couple hundred feet from them, and I left them there, and they're lost. They don't know what to do when they're out in the wild, so they're trapped in that spot until I went back to them to guide them out. They didn't like the pathway that was only 1.5 feet, 2 feet wide. They would rather it be a 10-foot wide path so that they could make sure there wasn't a snake or it's going to jump out. Right? There's only 5 different poisonous snakes in this area. I've yet to see one. But they worry. I didn't. I just wandered everywhere. Anyways, this is that Millis Road Picosin, that's what I'm calling it. I don't know if Tom might have a better term for this, but to me this is, the tallest pines in this area might be 10 to 12 feet. Very strange area. It's a lot of smilax creeping through it, and a lot of ericaceous plants. You walk on it and it feels like a sponge. But I've never gotten my feet wet, actually. It's really strange. It's sunken just below a little bit of the surrounding land. But whatever the conditions are, I mean, I'm guessing the nutrients are crazy. There's probably high pH and low nutrient availability, and it stunts things. This really bizarre area. And then this is what I was saying about the Pringle Road burn is what I described it. This is the first time I was there. This is where I found my first Venus flytraps. And that's my next slide, actually. But if you look closely, you see that white there. Those are actually some Venus flytraps flowering. This is get a little closer. This was, I think, the end of May, 1st of June. It was a Memorial Day weekend, I think, in 2012. It was the first time I wandered into this area. And I managed to find these on my own the first time without too much difficulty after reading some information online. Really cool stuff pops up after these fires. And of course, like I said, the first plant here that I'm going to show you actually is the Venus flytrap, Dionaea muscipula. I'm going to have fun spitting these names out. I'm not the greatest at the Latin, but as I was saying, they flower in late May, early June for the most part. And what we know them for is not their flowers, or their seeds, which this is the seed pods, which I have found later in the season. This, I think, was in August when I've been down there another time. But these little traps, this is what everyone wants the Venus flytrap for, and why it's actually has issues, because people go out and dig them up. They shouldn't do that. But anyways, this is about the northeasternmost extreme population that you'll find of Venus flytrap. I think they say that supposedly is at like 70 or 80 miles circle around Wilmington in North and South Carolina that you find them typically. But this is, I think, about as far northeast as you get on with them. It's a little further than that. Anyways, that was in the spring that year, or late May. And other times I've been there, this is just a couple hundred yards away from where that was at in reality, maybe a quarter of a mile. This was in the fall, this was in November of 2012 or 13, I don't remember. I think this was 12 actually. The mouths, as in this picture, you can see they all flushed red. I thought that was so cool. How the season changed, the plants change themselves, and you got to see them in a different light.
Jim,
Yep.
you know the relationship between when they flower and when the mouths form and when they...
Oh, they can have leaves year round. They can be evergreen, but they can also, if it's a hard winter, they'll probably go dormant, or if it's really dry, they can go dormant. And if they get burnt, they'll lose their leaves. But other than, as if you go back here, this was from one that had been recently burnt. There's nothing down here at the base. They haven't, so I'm assuming the old foliage had all gotten burned up and recycled, the nutrients. And this is just the new flush. Just prior to, this one probably didn't flower that year, but the ones back here had flowered, so it was just different age. But these, you can see, I pressed the wrong button here. Down here, these are all flat with the ground, so those would probably survive till the next year or so. They might not be overly active during the winter, but it'll start growing and those will be there. And let's see, what did I put this one in? Oh, okay. Our next group of plants I'm actually going into are some of the sundews, the Drosera's. And actually, this is near what I call the pine savanna, or in the Picosin on Millis Road. When you walk down this road, if you look very carefully, you see sundews everywhere. I did not realize that they were there when I first started going there. They were so tiny. This was one that was actually closer to where those last Venus flytraps were taken. This was in the fall, but growing among sphagnum. But that plant is maybe, if it's lucky, the size of a penny. And it's growing in among sphagnum moss here, which was really striking, seeing that the red filaments with the sundew, or with the dewdrop on them, ready to capture little insects or other arthropods that might wander onto them. But then amongst that chartreuse color of the sphagnum. And this is Drosera capillaris, the pink sundew. There's some that I was told by the fellow who took me out initially, that they might be in the dwarf sundew, which I'm not sure that they were. I think they were all capillaris at the time, so I've given that part out. But anyways, here's another even more close-up of the Drosera capillaris. And this was a quite large one, and I think I must have a flower stalk on this one. This would have been in probably in June. If I go back and look at my records. And here's a whole patch of them. And these, just before they flowered, the flower buds are here. They weren't actually open, but all over the ground. This is like what you would see on that little road that I was just showed you the picture of. Walk along and they're just lining the edges of it. They're not right where the tracks would be, but right in that grass that's down the middle. They'd be all over there by the hundreds. Right there, you can see them again there. Just everywhere, all that red. When I first went there, looking back at the pictures I took at that I had taken at the Pringle Road burn, I now find them. I can pick them out. I didn't know they were there at the time. Wasn't even paying attention. I didn't expect to see them, but they were there, and they're minuscule. They might have been a quarter of an inch to even an eighth of an inch across. And then the second species that I definitely have seen, this is a larger growing one. The leaves on this one, unlike the capillaris, which they hold pretty much flat to the ground, and maybe an inch and a half. That's a really, really big plant. This one will get up to 4 to 5 inches tall. This is the Drosera intermedia, the spoonleaf sundew. You can see it has much longer petiole here, and the pad's a little bit different. It's kind of, I think I described one as a tennis racket and the other as this one as a badminton racket. It has a long, the long, thin handle on a badminton racket. Anyways, here's one you can see a little better next to the catkin of a longleaf pine, or the cone of a longleaf pine, the male cone. And you can see this one's just starting to throw up a flower stalk here. This was at the bog on Millis Road here. This was the first one I had found, the intermediate. And there's actually one in blossom. Nothing spectacular, just a little white blossom atop a little wire. But the plants are so cool in general. And this is going back to Millis Road. This is the fellow who took me here the first time. That is to this bog here. This is John Henderson. And he showed me some of these things, and then I point out other things to him that he had not noticed. So you'll start to see my next group of plants here, the Sarracenias, which this is in the fall. This is November, about a week before Thanksgiving in 2013, and I think I've been there in 14 as well. Maybe actually 12, 13, and 14 I've been to this bog. I always find something cool here. And what you were seeing in the previous picture is the next one I'll talk about. These are actually Sarracenia Flava, but my first one here is Sarracenia Purpurea, subspecies Purpurea, variety Purpurea. There's a mountain form too. There's a couple different forms depending where you're at, but this is the form you find in eastern North Carolina. This is the typical purple pitcher plant. Very hardy species. It gets maybe 6 inches tall foliage-wise, and when it's in flower, they might get to 12 to 15 inches at most. And as you can see, the veining on them is so cool. Sometimes they're red, especially in the fall. Earlier in the year, they may be red or green. You can still see the veining here. Just really cool, stout plants, very dense, as you can see. And here's a picture of blossom. This was in the spring, but I've seen them in flower in November as well. So really cool. The architecture of the Sarracenia blossoms, if you've never seen them, I can't describe them per se, but they look like a flying saucer. But what happens, the flowers are actually up and under here, I believe, or the sexual parts of the flower. And when the seed ripens, they kind of are held and can distribute with that little saucer-like thing. They get blown in the wind or get knocked over, and they kind of dump from here and there, and the seeds come up. And then these are much more visible. This is the Sarracenia Flava, the yellow pitcher plant. They are more up to anywhere from 2 to 3 feet tall, so very visible. And this was a morning in late June, or actually late May, or again. Just really cool to see them, especially in the light in the morning, and the light hitting them. Here's another picture of that. I was thinking, there's a Muppet character from Sesame Street that I don't remember what they were called, but that had this strange head. It just looked like that. Hit me yesterday when I was thinking about that, but so I didn't have time to look it up. Anyways, here they are, and this is August, and you can see they're starting to get a little tattered, but it's still in the morning light, because I tend to go in here in the morning. It gets pretty darn hot here during the summer, so I think mid-May we should be okay, provided we don't have a 90-degree stretch. But in August, you want to be there early in the morning to see these. And the colors on them vary. This is one that was pure green, not a speck of red up under here. I've seen them that have quite a bit of red veining here and right around the mouth, and then some of them have even more of the veining that shows up the stem. And I don't know if it's from the blood from all the insects they eat or what. And again, you can see the flower here, a fresh one, just in the background of the yellow one there. And then this is a ripe seed head here, and you can see the capsule in here, and then this is that the bottom part, and then the top, and then the seeds are in here, and then there's a little basket-like thing down here. So it's kind of really strange inflorescence. And my next insectivore, because I'm started with all the insectivores, I figured I'd keep them together. These were tiny, and these were at the burn on Pringle Road. This is the second time I was there, actually, the second year I was there. The first year I didn't realize they were there, but they weren't flowering when I was there, but they were there. I found them in pictures later on. This is Pingicula pumila, the small butterwort, and this one's not recorded, at least on the USDA plants website, as being in Carteret County, which is where this is at. So but it is in, I think, the next county down. So anyways, these individual things, those might be ½ inch across, those individual rosettes, and the flowers might be on a stem that's 2 to 3 inches tall. The flowers are about ½ inch across at most. And they range from pure white to, like, this one has a little bit of purple in it, and this one almost has a little blue cast with a purple throat. There's quite a bit of variation in them. just tiny little things. And here's a little bit closer, you can see. And if you look up here in the corner, you can see one of the ones that's more purple and it has kind of a horn or a hook on the back of the flower. Just a cute little plant. Now in here, you can see a Venus flytrap here. And this is crassula, or no, Vaccinium crassifolium. Second species of Pingicula, which I've seen both at that same area as well as at the bog on Millis Road, is Pingicula cerulea, the blue-flowered butterwort. This one, on the other hand, is not so tiny. The flower stalk is probably up 12 to 15 inches. The individual flowers are maybe an inch and a half across, inch and a half across. The rosettes might be 4 or 5 inches across. And here's a close-up of the blossom. Really pretty things that stand up out. They kind of look like a little orchid, though not related at all. But I think this is the cool part of them. I don't care if that's the flower. I just love the rosettes. They're so fleshy looking. You can find these when they're out of flower so easily now that I know what I'm looking for. But that's, again, that's maybe a 3 to 4 inch wide little rosette there. And if you come, we'll probably find these with no problem there along the Pringle Road. This is probably the tiniest of the, this one, I don't know if it's insectivores, but it's carnivorous. It might, I think it goes for more nematodes, and this is a Utricularia subulata, the zigzag bladderwort. It's one of the smallest insectivores that you can find. Now, I've never seen the plant itself, only the flowers. It's in the ground, or in, if it's flooded, it might float a little bit, but all you see is just a wiry stem with 1 to maybe 3 bright yellow flowers on it. I don't know if you can see it here, but this is in the sphagnum moss. The plant actually starts right here, is where there's some threads coming up, and this is like maybe 3 inches tall. And there's a bright yellow flower here, a bud there, another bud. Tiny, tiny little things. That is a close-up, and that flower's maybe maybe a half to or 3/8 to a half an inch across at most, if that. And this was actually the first one I had seen of those. That was in November. Well, these other ones, oops, darn, wrong buttons here. These were in June, or late May, early June. That's when they do their most of when they're firing. There's other species of Utricularia there, but I have not seen them. I've seen other people who have taken pictures of them. But I have yet to see them. There's some purple flowered species as well. They're a little bit more visible, I think, and they often occur in more flooded areas. I think is it Inflata? Is that the one of the ones you might see in a flooded area, I think. Okay, now how many insectivores can you find in this picture? Different ones. There's the obvious, of course, here, the Venus flytrap. Here's a giant Pingicula pumila. And here's a sundew right there. There's some more Pingicula and sundew up here. So they're just tiny. You have to look for them. You don't realize it. That's what the first time I was there, I overlooked so much. And I still overlook so much. And this I don't talk about in the talk, but I don't know if you're familiar with Vaccinium crassifolium. This is one of the blueberries that creeps on the ground everywhere. Okay, this one's not an insectivore, but this one is kind of predatory. This is Agalinus, and I'm not going to guess the species. There's 3 or 4 different ones out there. To me, they all look alike. This was taken in early November, or in November, mid-November. They hadn't had a frost yet the year I took this. This was in 2013. And I haven't seen them like this since, but beautiful, wiry plants with these bright pink flowers on it. This is a plant that, if I remember correctly, it's in the Orobranchaceae, which is southward. It's the same family that includes Indian paintbrushes. And most of the plants in that family are hemiparasites. That is, they have their own roots and they have to make chlorophyll, but if they need to, they will stick an IV into some of their neighbors, and they will steal some of their nutrients and water. And so they're a little bit sneaky. This is a closer up picture of the blossom. Really pretty little things. You can see the hairs on it. And that's probably about a half an inch across. But as you can see, wiry mass here, you can get probably hundreds of them on an individual plant. It can be out at a time in reality. This was very late in the season, so I missed the main part of it. And here's another one. I thought this was cool with the fly on it. And another cousin of that is the Buchnura americana, which this is actually locally rare in places, but I've seen this a couple times. I've been down in the Croatan. It's also in the Orchidaceae and can parasitize other plants as well. The flowers, it's not one that jumps out. You have to be looking for this little thing. It's just a little lavender flower on a tall spike. Very few leaves, maybe a little rosette right at the ground level. Not much to look at, but except for the little blossoms, as you can see. And it can get up to maybe 12 to 18 inches, maybe 24 inches even, if it's growing well. And this was right along the road. This was, I mean, just not in quite a ditch, but just on the edge of the road. I mean, they'll grow in really inhospitable spots. But again, it's one that parasitizes its plants around, if needed. Now I've gotten rid of my plants that are, we're through all the plants that are that I have found so far that are a little needy in that they're either carnivorous or parasitic. But we're going to get to a little bit more familiar plants. So this one here is Kalmia Carolina, Carolina Laurel. I think it's also called sheep laurel sometimes. And the species I've seen is a couple different names too, but I think the current growing name is Carolina. These I have seen only in what I call the Picosin area. They're only maybe 1 to 3 feet tall. And this is growing densely in here with, there's smilax, there's pteridium fern, there's other ericaceous plants in here. And I was very late, it was kind of late in the season for them, but they were in flower. This was in early June. Like I said, they're only a couple feet tall at most, but the whole flower stalk will be covered. Unlike, in a mountain laurel, you get clusters at the tips of the stems. These cover the stalk. They come up out between the leaves. The leaves are a little bit more gray-green and they're smaller. I'd say they're just maybe 1 or 2 inches long, maybe 3 at most, and maybe a half an inch wide. Quite a different look from, do you have a question back there?
Yeah, just what time of year is it?
This is June. So if these would probably be in flower in mid-May, if you come along on the trip. Right. Again, this is in that coast and that spongy. It's really strange. It's like walking on the new carpeting that has the really super thick padding underneath it. You can feel it. And another relative, the Ericaceae, is the Rhododendron Atlanticum. And again, these were flowering at the same time in that Picosin type situation. I've also seen them at the bog as well. Sweetly fragrant. You have to smell these. Wonderful fragrance. And as it's called, the Dwarf Azalea. Only about 2 feet tall, maybe 3 feet tall at most. I've seen them in there. Pristine whites standing out among the greens that you see in this area. And that's one you can grow in your garden pretty easily. You can probably even grow that laurel with no problem. I've seen that actually in Orton. Or the mountain laurel. Another ericaceous plant, and I have this one in the garden. Our plant in the garden is about 6 or 7 feet tall. It's been there for years, but it doesn't get cut back by fire. All these plants get burnt back periodically, so they're controlled. Even if they could get taller, they don't. But this is Leucothoe racemosa, the swamp dog hobble. And it has these racemes of inflorescence on somewhat of a woody stem in reality, little white bells. And then the new flush of growth has this bronze tint to it. This plant was maybe 2 to 3 feet tall. Like I said, though, our plant in the garden is 6 or 7 feet tall. This was growing in full blazing sun. I've seen it in part shade. It'll grow in your yard, though. because of that. We can grow this out here. It's native here as well, but this is the only one I've ever seen in the wild. It was just a small clump on the pine savanna. As you can see back in here, some of the longleaf pine. And there's Pine's tail out here directly behind it, the loblolly.
Jim, what kind of fruit is it?
It's going to have probably a dry capsule. I haven't seen it right offhand that I paid attention to because I've been there in November as well, but I didn't take note of it. But based on what it's related to, I would guess this dry brown capsule. Another close relative are the Lyonias and Mariana, and this is Lyonia mariana. In 2013, this was spectacular everywhere in June, the 1st of June. Gorgeous swaths of this everywhere, different shades. Last year I went back, there was just a sprinkling of them. I was hoping for more. But I think this, and I was there in 2012, the first year, and it was about the same time, it had been much warmer. They were about done flowering. So I just saw the tail end, a couple blossoms. But they were in full glory in 2013 when I was there. And I think that, they might be in flower real well if we're there in mid-May this year. This is walking out into the, again, what I call the pine savanna, like the longleaf in the background. These plants are evergreen, the semi-evergreen, maybe 2 to 3 feet tall. As you can see in this picture, they often have this cream, pinky cream tint to them, but there is some variation. This one is just a pristine white, and wow, this is one of the deeper colored ones. Where I see a lot of the color coming out in is the bracts at the top of the individual florets. And notice how they are up off the flower. That kind of becomes a little bit important later on when I show you the next plant. But, I mean, you could make selections off these if I had taken cuttings of them, but I didn't. The next plant, and you can see it in here, is the Zenobia Lenta. And I didn't realize what these were. I just thought they were some more Lyonia when I was taking the pictures. I didn't realize it until later that I was looking more closely at them. That's what these were. But there's some in here. These are in that Picosin situation. But I did see it in a few other spots. That you'll see here, the flowers here, they're a little bit different shape than that of the Lyonia. We'll go back here. At the base, if you look at the very bottom of the flower, it's kind of clasped inwards. And then those, like I said, those bracts on the top, those kind of go up and out. While on the Zenobia, the little bracts at the top, they clasp the flower itself. And it's more of an open bell. It's not pinched in at the tip. That's what I noticed later on. These were all pristine white, but there are some pastel pink forms that you can buy in this one. But you can see this is drawn with smilax all around it here. It's a tangled mess, but really cool to see these in the wild. Here's an even more close-up picture of the blossoms. And then this is in the fall, when I was there in November. Some of them, not all of them look this nice, but this was the Zenobia, how it colored up. That fiery orange and yellow color. There was some red tints. And Ralph, you can see the capsules of the Zenobia here. I'm assuming that the Leucothoe would be very similar in this. Maybe not so. The inflorescence is a different shape. Other than that, you have these dry capsules. This is one you're probably all familiar with, the Clethra ulnifolia, which it is everywhere. Next of kin to the Ericaceae, it's in this its own Clethraceae or Cyriliaceae, I can't remember which. But anyways, this was in August and it was in full flower. The fragrance when you're walking through this is spectacular. It makes thickets everywhere. I didn't see any of these getting much more than a couple feet, but there are cultivars that we grow in our gardens that get 5-6 feet tall. And there's others that are a couple feet. But spreads everywhere. It was kind of cool seeing it in the garden. I mean, in the wild versus the garden, which is a very different situation. And here's a little bit close-up of a semi-past inflorescence there, but still has that very nice fragrance that you expect from the Clethra ulnifolia. And I have one photo here of Racina Flava. If Denny Werner were here, our former director, he just loves Cyrilla. So this one is past flowering, but I never saw any of these that were much more than 3 or 4 feet tall. Because of the fire, they never get real big. If you go down to the mill on Yates Mill, yeah, they have them that are great big. I mean, they'll get probably 10, 15 feet tall, beautiful bark on them, small trees. But they are much more reduced here all the time. This was past, like I said, this is the seed heads forming on this. Still quite attractive and still very noticeable. You see these just as much in that Picosan area as well. And this is a little bit of the adjacent grassy areas around it, and the swamp tie-tie. This is one you have to look for. I have yet to see this one flower. It's probably going to be in bud right now. I've never been down there at this time of the year. But this is, let's see if I can spit it out. Pixie barbiolata, the flowering pixie moths. There's 2 species in North Carolina. One is more, I guess, in the sandhills, and then this is more coastal. And it goes up in, I think the species goes up in as far as Rhode Island, possibly, but it's all coastal. It wants the sandy conditions, but if you could have the right situation, if you have a sand bed, you might be able to coax this one to grow as a rock garden plant. This was in November, while this previous one, that was in May, June again. And the color was starting to come on it here through the winter color. You can see the flower buds, which, like I said, could be starting to flower now. If I were able to get a chance to go down there now, I'd probably be able to find this in blossom. Little white flowers, it's related to the Shortia, I think, if I remember, and that family, which I can't think of what it is right now. It starts with a D. Dip something easy. But anyways. And this is more of a summer treat here. When I've been there, was there in August. There's probably, if I had been able to key them out, probably 4 or 5 different Rexias. I found 3 that I could, 3 or 4 that I was able to, or at least 3 that I was able to definitively say what they might be. This is Rexia aliphanis, the Savannah Meadow Beauty. This has a little more blue foliage, and I don't think it has as much hair as the next 2. Here's a close-up of the flowers. The blossoms on this are about 1.5 or 2 inches across even. This is one of the larger flowered ones, and about 18 inches tall. And let's see, back here. Yeah, this was an area, there had been a fire, a late spring fire. I think it was, I don't know if it was set or not. But this area was just all open, and this Savannah Meadow Beauty was actually coming up all through. It was in the pine savanna, open up in that area. It was not overly moist. The ground is still bare. You can see the black from the charring that had occurred, and just some new pine needles falling. And that's where I saw these. Wow, this next one, this was near where the Pringle Road burned. The first place I'd been was at. This was along another access road that goes back through the woods. It actually has a number, but it's like non-existent. Don't try driving with it. We were walking along it. This is a really wet area. It's a wet berm. And the Rexia mariana, which you see this one, actually you'll see this one in southern Wake County. You'll see it around here in wet ditches in the summer. It was just filling it all up. Beautiful, probably inch and a half blossoms on that one. And the third one I have here is Rexia petiolata. This was a much smaller flowered one, maybe 1/2 inch to 1 inch blossom. The petals were a little different shape too to me. You see that one? This is the Mariana. I don't know, it's kind of asymmetric. Well, these have more of a symmetric petal to me. And I don't know if you can see it on the leaves here, but there's these. This next one, you can actually see the serration on the edge of the leaves on there. We probably won't see any of those in flowering. Nor will we see the Ludwigias. Ludwigia virgata. This one is kind of really thin reduced leaves, almost grass-like leaves in comparison to the next one I'll show you. These bright yellow flowers just stand right out. This is related to your evening primrose that you might have in the garden, or fuchsias, the Onagraceae family. Gara. And it has the same floral shapes, and you'll see in this. But here's a close-up of the Vergata. You can see these very linear leaves here. And then this is another species, Ludwigia bonariensis, the Carolina primrose willow. And this had much larger leaves. And what I thought was so cool, if you look, I love the petals on this. It looks like someone ironed the creases in there. Each one. But this was a bit taller too. This was probably 3 feet tall. The other was maybe 2. And this could probably get up to 4. Then there was this other little yellow flower. I didn't know what this was for a while. It took me a while to figure it out. I didn't expect to see flax. This is flax medium, the stiff yellow flax. This was at the bog on Millis Road. My buttons. The leaves are very reduced. They clasp the stem, and you can barely see them here and there. And I'm guessing there's probably a rosette, but the rosette was not that apparent in August. So the flowers were out. Here we go. Yeah, it's a little bit closer up. It was morning light again, and I got some washout from the sun, but you get the gist there. And flax. On to some things in the Asteraceae. This is Pachyra anonyma. And this is Small's ragwort. This was right along the road, and there was several clumps of it, and we just stopped real quick to get a picture of it. And then what I thought was really cool about this plant are these leaves. I don't know if you can see it here. It looks they have the teeth are on them, these rounded leaves. It was really distinct. But then there's other leaves further up that have, much more jagged look. That it took me a little while to figure this one out. But strange. Foliar anatomy on this as it changed throughout the plant. Another one in the Asteraceae. This was back at the bog on Millis Road. Is the Marshallia graminefolia. Pastel pink inflorescence on top of wiry stems, which with very linear leaves down there. If you look closely, they're growing, as you can see, in among the Sarracenia Flavas. Here's a close-up of the inflorescence. And I just love how you can see the stamens sticking out here, these purple specks, and then just that flush of pink on the unopened blossoms. And I could be wrong with some of these, but I'm thinking this is Ionactis linearifolius. The next one I know is, but this one, I'm not sure. I have this in the garden just behind the wall here. We have Ionactis linearifolius there. The flax leaf, white top aster. Don't ask me why it's called white top. Maybe the seeds is my guess. Could be white top because since it's a pastel blue. The leaves are quite reduced on this as well. This is in November, and this is a better example. This is more typical of what I have over here. That you can see these very reduced needle-like leaves almost on a plant that might be 12 to 15 inches tall at best. And they can be quite dense if they're grown in a garden. This would be a perfect rock garden plant because actually it's done very well in the Xeric garden, or the scree garden, I should say.
Yeah.
Yep.
The previous picture.
Yep.
Was that a fire ant?
No. That's just the edge of. Remember I said about the this bog area where it's at. It was formed by digging it out. I think that's just the bank. It was on top of the bank and was leaning over, and it was just some erosion. I've not seen any fire ants out in there in the Croatan. Doesn't mean there aren't any. This is one that really threw me. I thought this was a caligula at first, and then I got looking at I just quickly snapped a photo of this. This was in November. This was in the bog. This is Bigeloia nudata. The Pinewood rayless goldenrod. It took me looking very closely and realized those are actually asteraceous flowers. Arizona plant. The foliage, as you can see, is quite reduced. And there's probably, again, a rosette down in the grass if I didn't even get a chance to see. But in these wiry stems, you have this cool yellow inflorescence late in the season. And then, let's see, Linda brought in some seed today. I'm a cousin of this. There's some Franklinia seed over here, actually. But anyways, this is Gordonia lasianthus, our native coastal cousin of the Franklinia, loblolly bag. I can grow this weekly here. It doesn't like to prosper here, but it will grow here. But out there, they grow in the thickets. You'll see them along the roads. And areas have been burnt. And this was in an area that had been probably burnt the spring before. And on this beautiful, the new growth, you get these beautiful fried egg-like blossoms that are 3 inches across. Pristine white with those yellow stamens. I wish it did better here. I have one in the garden, but they struggle here. Not out there. Torture them to death out there, and they grow like a weed. Anyways, this can be a shrub or a small tree up to maybe 15, 20 feet tall if it really gets up there. And it's not taken down by fire. But when they're taken back by fire, you can easily see the flowers. Another shrub is Hypericum cruce Andre, I think is how you may say that. This I actually saw along, let's see, 58, I think is the road, going down to Emerald Valley. I was actually on my way back up here. I'd seen this actually in a few places, other places, but I didn't see any plants quite as nice as this one. But this is a strange Hypericum to me. These leaves kind of clasp the bud until they open, which I thought was really cool. It's kind of like a little clamshell surrounding the bud, and then the flower gets about ready to open it, and it unclasps enough for the flowers to come out. You can see that here, these rounded leaves. And then the leaves that are further down, they're a little more elongated. I just thought that was kind of cool, and I've not seen that up here. But
What time of year?
this was in August. And then along Pringle Road, we were just driving along. This is, we weren't going 60 mile an hour on botanizing, but because you don't dare go 60 mile an hour on Pringle Road. If you go 20, you're going probably too fast. Was a relatively common garden plant, but Monarda punctata. And I don't know, can anybody see something else that's in that picture? See anything great in here? Yeah, I thought this is one of my favorite spiders. It's a green lynx spider, and it was perfectly camouflaged with the flowers of this, and the yellow flowers that are speckled. It looks great with those legs on the spider. And then you have the pink bracts, which this one's a pretty cool garden plant as well. So, but I just had to include this one because of that. Love that spider. Haven't seen anywhere else out there. On the Savannah, as this one's name actually includes it in the common name, Asclepias pediculata, the Savannah milkweed. This is a small green-flowered milkweed, maybe 12 to 15 inches tall. It was growing among probably the wiregrass growing underneath the longleaf pines in the pine savanna. And the flowers on this are individually, they're actually pretty good size. I'd say they're almost a half an inch, between a quarter and a half an inch across, which for an individual floret on a milkweed is pretty big around here anyways. I just thought that was pretty cool. Butterflies might like this if they could find it. There aren't that many of them though, and that is butterflies or of this milkweed growing in the savanna. It's a sporadic grower. And then the bigeloia that I showed you earlier, this is what I thought it might be. I thought it might be a polygola when I first saw it, but it was a few months later. This was taken in late May of 2012. This is one of my first trip to Patsy's Pond with my cousins. This is when my cousins were standing there looking around at their feet, waiting on me to come back and rescue them. But anyways, that was about 2 to 2.5 feet tall, this Polygola cymosa. the tall pine barren milkweed. There's several species of Polygola in the North Carolina. And this is one of the larger growing ones. And down here, there's actually a rosette, which you can't see. Here's a close-up of the inflorescence. Another one. You can see the individual flowers here. There's some little bracts, and then the flowers between the bracts. Another more more noticeable, even though that one's taller, this is the one that I see the most everywhere, and I love this little thing. This was, again, late May. I've seen this in flower in November. This is Polygola lutea, the orange milkweed. It might be 6 inches tall, or it could be 1.5 feet tall. Here it is growing in the, this is in August, in among the wiregrass, which I thought was just such a cool picture there. And then here's a close-up of the inflorescence in the morning with the dew on it. But you can see the individual florets squeezing up between these orange bracts. Looks like a little clover, but it's bright orange. And this one is a little, I've only seen this one a few times, but I've seen it in late summer and into the fall. This Polygola Purpurea, this little pastel lavender one. It's much more wiry. It's not, it doesn't have the mass that the lutea has. But, yeah. These actually, I guess, occur in Wake County too, in the southern part of this county. This is Gentiana Balance, the pine barren gentian. Spectacular in November. To go down, they're just sprinkled here and there. Unlike a lot of the gentians you see used in, that you see pictures of that they truly put in rock gardens. This one doesn't form dense clumps. You have a stalk or two that might have one, if you're lucky, 2 flowers to a stalk. But to see those intricate blossoms, I took lots of pictures of them. That was a rarity there, seeing 2 right next to each other. Normally they were spaced out several feet apart. It's just popping up. You never see the plant itself. I have one in the lath house. It doesn't have much to it. Just a few stems. The leaves are kind of linear. They blend right into the grass, so you never see them when they're in flower because they just blend in entirely. But that spectacular blossom is so cool. And that was, unfortunately, November. So you won't see that in May. This was in August. This is Sabbatia gentianoides. This is the Pinewood rose gentian. This was at the bog. It's the only place I've seen this one. But I've seen pictures of this one. Other people take this one. There was just a couple that I had. And I didn't get good photos, unfortunately. But, that pink, that lavender pink there, spectacular, standing out among the grass. But then this is not so impressive, but this one threw me too. I thought this was a phlox when I first saw it. This is Sabbatia deformis, the lance leaf rose gentian, and I think I saw this both at the bog and on the pine savanna. This picture's in the pine savanna, if I remember right. Very diminutive flowers in comparison. Those were the other Sabbatia. Those were a couple inches across. But this one may be, that's the right button here again. That might be a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch across the individual florets, and these clasping leaves up the stem. And if you here in the picture, also you can see this is a flower, or yeah, the seed stalk of a Venus flytrap. Down here's the Venus flytrap, and there's a Polygola lutea. Another Polygola lutea down here. Anyways, here's a little bit more close up of the flower. Like I said, I thought it was a phlox of some sort. I'm thinking, what in the world phlox would be out here? Turns out it's a Sabbatia. This one, we would probably see this one flowering in May, and that's when this picture was taken. We don't have many penstemons out here in the eastern United States, but this is one, or in the eastern North Carolina. This is Penstemon latigatus, which is really similar to Penstemon digitalis. Don't ask me to distinguish between the two. We have theoretically both of them in the perennial border. But, this was growing just along the road in a nice big patch. Normally you just see a couple plants here and there, but there's probably 15, 20 plants here in full flower, about 3 feet tall. and that was 2012. Just love the, you can see in this picture the hairs on the floral tube, and then just the streaking in the inside. And it's a little bit wetter situations here. This is actually one of the ponds at Patsy's Pond. This is Nufferludia subspecies advena, the yellow pond lily. This is the form you see in eastern North Carolina. There's just ludia as well that occurs here too. I'm pretty sure this is the advena. Nothing spectacular to look at flower-wise. Here's the inflorescence. But I thought that's kind of cool, seeing them in the wild. I've read about them, and I've probably seen them other places too. Unlike the water lilies, the leaves on this, a lot of times you'll get the ones that come up out of the water, much like that of a lotus, but not quite to the extent. But I like this picture here. I got a perfect mirror here. Anyways, so water lilies. This one was one. There was an area we stopped at. It wasn't near the what I call the Pringle Road burn, but it was a little before that on the opposite side of the road. Walked back in, and there was this thicket of wax myrtle all around it, and I get on the other side of it, and I see that there's a lily pond. It was, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 feet across. But it's surrounded by, everything was burned around it except for the wax myrtle. And just full of water lilies, the Nymphia odora, American white water lily. And then again, I got that mirror. The dark water, I don't know if it was because of the charcoal that had been there from the burn a few weeks before or what, but it did really nice in the morning. This was in August. But we could see that one probably in May too. Anybody do aquariums? Oh, if you've heard of the banana plant, an aquarium, it's Nymphoides aquatica. The real name that it goes by is typically big floating hearts. This was full, or covered the whole edge of the pond, the big pond at Patsy's Pond when I was first there with my cousins. And I was looking at it, and it was cool to see these in the wild. Tiny little flowers. This is in I forget what family. It's a strange family. It's not related to the water lily at all. Anyways, the blossoms are about 1/2 inch across, and the pads anywhere from 1 to 3 inches. Some of them might be a little bit bigger. I don't think this is one of the leaves in it, but could be. And it'll even grow out into the damp soil on the edge of the pond as well. It doesn't have to be submerged. Another one growing in the water, where it's this Eriocolins, the compressum. This was in that same pond, a finger branch of it that went out. This was in the fall. Oh wait, I take it back. This was in August. But I didn't actually see the foliage of the plant. Just saw the flower stalks. Oops. The flower stalks. It just looks like a hat pin with a button of white on top of it. Tall inflorescence. This is by the thousands of them. So it was just really cool to see them in the distance here. All of that is the Eriocolins. And then back near where those water lilies were at was this one here. This is a Lacnocolin, Anceps. This was much different. These were actually probably 3 or 4 feet tall. Well, this was maybe 10 inches tall at most. The whole clump here might be 6 inches across. You can see it's just growing in this bare sandy soil. All the organic matter was burned off. And this little tuft, this would, I think, work as a rock garden plant if you have some sand, a sand bed with maybe keeping it moist right on the edge. Again, just get these little buttons, which are so cute. And this is one, this will grow in evenly moist soil. I wouldn't put this one in a rock garden. This is Rhythmospora colorata. There's another name for it too, which I can't remember. It's had numerous name changes. This is Star Rush White Top, or I know it as a White Top Sedge. Tony, I think, sells this one sometimes. We have it actually right outside the door of the Arboretum. It does not like it anymore because it's too shaded, but it grows, just doesn't flower. If this was growing in a ditch right along 58, flowered its head off, and it was about, this was only about 12 to 15 inches tall. Wow, this one here, this was in the bog on Millis Road. This is Latifolia, the sand swamp white top, and it was about 4 feet tall. Not as prolifically flowered, but I thought that was just kind of cool to see in one. I couldn't believe that they were this tall, because I've only ever seen it that tall. But you can see the Sarracenias here in the background, and I think that's a Marshallia and stuff. Anyways, this was just an adorable little thing, tiny, 2.5, 3 inches tall. Cicerentium minus, the dwarf blue-eyed grass, which is not blue, just pastel lavender. I've actually seen it as a weed in the lawn here at the Arboretum, but I've been seeing it in situ where it's supposed to be. It was kind of cool, just an adorable little thing. This thing's strange. I don't know if it like ranges the East Coast down or over into Texas, and I don't know if it's been introduced or what, but there's a population in California. So when I looked up the information on this one, tiny little thing. I don't guess the species of Xyris. There's a lot of them out there. This is another grass-like plant that has a little yellow tuft on them when they flower. They have a tuft with the individual flower that comes out each day. They can be anywhere from 1.5 to 2 feet tall. And actually, here's a close-up of the photo. But this one here is what I have for my desktop on my computer. I just love it underneath the pines here, growing in among the wiregrass and some other rushes in here that were growing. There's several species of them. Tony had been selling one as well. I managed to kill it in my trough garden on the roof. It was supposed to be a bog. Hasn't been as boggy as it should be. And now we're getting to close to the end, but the orchids. This is one that, let's see, Tom might have to help me pronounce. Longilibris? This is Spiranthes longilibris. Does that sound right? Longilibris. I can't spit it out right. See, Longilibris. The giant spiral lady trasses. Tom, I think this is the same weekend that you saw them down at the Green Swamp. I saw this in the bog on Millis Road. That apparently this was not an undocumented plant. It's a federally endangered one, and this was in November of 2012.
How close is the Green Swamp to this area?
I'd say probably 80 or 90 miles to the northeast. The Green Swamp's just down below Wilmington, right? And this is up Swansboro, Cedar Point. But anyways, I figured out what this one was. I sent it this picture. I thought it was Longilibris, or Longibris. And I sent it to Tom, and Tom sent it to some of his native plant friends, and they were able to tell me definitively that it was the rare species. I've seen at least 2, maybe 3 different species here, but here's another second picture. This was in 2013. The first one was 2012. I was there last fall. I did not find any in flower. And then this is another one. This was actually right along the road right along Pringle Road. I believe this is Spiranthes vernalis. This was in May. And you can really see why they're called Spiranthes with this, how it goes down. I've also seen these in the tidal, the marsh area that we might have lunch at. Anyways, I just think those are so cool to see orchids. And then there's much more spectacular orchid. This is the only one I've seen of this species in the wild. I've seen them in cultivation. The Calipogon tuberosus, the tuberous grass pink. They're kind of cool. The flowers are upside down. This would be the bottom of most orchids, and this would be the top. They hold them upside down. They twist them around. This is only about 8 to 12 inches tall, probably. The individual flowers, that's probably about 1.5 or 2 across right there. So, but that stands out when you do see it in among the grass. You can see a little bit of the foliage down here. It just blends right in. And another one that was pretty cool, this was not too far from there, was the feisties, and I believe it's Divaricata. There's another species which real similar, and I can't remember what it's the. I can't think of it right now, but anyway, I believe this is Divaricata, the Rosebud Orchid. And I've seen these in a couple places. I've seen them just pretty close to where that last Calico was, and also at my Pringle Road burn. I've seen it there. And this is probably about 12 to 15 inches tall. The flowers probably 2.5 inches across. Very different. And here's the part that's that's on the top of the other orchid that should be on the bottom. And then this was at the bog on Millis Road. This is Platanthera. I'll really mess this one up. Blephoroglottis, something like that. The white stringed orchid. This is about 12 to 15 inches tall, maybe 18. The pristine white on these is just a gorgeous plant, and then how intricate the bottom petal is on this with the fringe. Yeah, isn't it bizarre? And then this I had to stop along 58. These were both these last 3 or 4. They were the last 4 orchids were all in August, within a day and a half. I was on my way home to come back up to Raleigh, and this is along 58. I had managed not to get chiggers the whole time I was there, but I saw these and I wandered out without anything on my ankles, and I ended up having bites all over my ankles. But it was worth it getting the pictures of this Panthera cristata, the crested yellow orchid. And these were a bit bigger. These were probably 2 to 2.5 feet tall. A spectacular, glowing orange yellow there. And this is my last one here. This is Stenonthium densum. It's not an orchid, but it's a monocot. This was my first visit. This was, again, where all the Venus flytraps were at the Pringle burn. And you can again see the burn back here. And here's the Venus flytraps in flower in here. And this was one of the plants that it got sunlight after that burn, and it just decided to flower. So you can see close up these little stars in this Sociolus plume. And that concludes the things. But I do take pictures of birds if you're a birder. I'm not a big birder, but I do take some. This is one. Actually, if we go to the marsh walk, I've gotten this the last 2 times I've been down there. I've called him in within 15 seconds of me putting on a recording from my phone. He's there. He's very territorial. This is a painted bunting. This is about the furthest north that they go. On the pine savanna, I have seen these. This is one of the red-cockaded woodpeckers, federally endangered. And I think, if I remember correctly, this is a Bachman sparrow, I think. Which is also locally, it's not common at all. It's locally considered rare, but you see them pretty frequently out in the pine savanna. Any questions?
Any questions for Tim?
Controlled burnings, do they do any mass plantings of any?
I don't think they do.
Do they do anything to maintain the areas that
It's a national forest. I'm guessing they do some lumber, or they might take some lumber out, I'm guessing, minimally. But I know that there's poaching.
There's some areas that they've gone in
Both
and taken the loblollies out
Probably.
to reintroduce the loblollies.
Yeah, there are actually areas there where loblollies were planted. Thinking back, they planted loblollies in some of these areas. There are some patches where the loblollies were planted, but now, yeah, they're taking them back out. Ralph?
Yeah, I didn't see these in the photograph. Are there native bees?
I don't know. I haven't paid attention. I'm typically looking at other things, or looking for other things.
I just have a practical question.
Uh-huh.
How do we protect ourselves from insects insects and wet feet? What do you suggest?
I have not gotten wet feet while I've been
Have
there.
in May, you know? or-
It depends on what the weather's been. Like, Charlie was worried that, if you said
We'd
it
get
was full of
stuck.
water, you were down there. It's always been dry when I've been there.
No guarantees.
So there's no guarantees, but I've walked, the bog,
Should we dose ourselves in chigger spray?
you might do that. You want to wear long pants. If you can stand it. I sometimes can't, and I will. If you're going out for a full day, you'd have to. But normally I go home at lunch, or I go back to my cousins at lunchtime, and I change into shorts. Anyways, one of the fellows I've met down there, one of their friends who's a big naturalist, he and his wife said you put a ring of stick deodorant around your ankles and around your thigh right here, above where you would have so the chiggers don't go down in your socks or up under your underclothing.
Test your socks with flowers of sulfur.
Flowers of sulfur.
From the pharmacy, costs practically nothing, and just dust your socks with it. And that will certainly ward off chiggers.
I haven't had any issues with mosquitoes either, though I'm sure they can be. But chiggers, chiggers are the things I've had issues with. Actually, in my cousin's backyard, which is a nice, beautiful backyard, I get chiggers in their yard every time I go there.
Is there actually something called a chigger spray?
I don't know. Is there something called a chigger spray?
There is some stuff that you can get that you can dose your clothes with.
Yeah.
Pretty heavy duty. You hang them out on the line and you spray the.
I figure it has to be pretty nasty.
Yeah, I know, I have it.
That's why I like the deodorant idea.
Put it on my clothes.
Anybody else?
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks again, Tim. Thank you very much.